Okay, I'm going to speak a little bit about 2000 AD, but particularly 2000 AD in the 80s, which is obviously going to be a bit nostalgic and rose-tinted glasses because it's been a long time since I actually read any of these books. But it was certainly its heyday. The talk was inspired by a blog article written by somebody called Garth Ennis, who wrote something called When 2000 AD Was the Future. And Garth himself is a pretty famous comic book creator. He wrote something called Creature, which I recommend everyone read. It's the best thing from the 90s that was written. It was also inspired by a BBC4 documentary that was called Comics Britannia, which actually surprisingly treated the whole subject with quite a lot of respect, even though it's the only thing I've ever watched on BBC4. 2000 AD started in 1979, and it started off with the princely price of 8 pence. It was an attempt basically to cash in on Star Wars and Battlestar Galactica and all the sci-fi stuff that was happening at the time. And they chose 2000 AD because they never thought it would last more than a couple of weeks. It's important to remember as well that 2000 AD wasn't in comic book stores, it wasn't that sort of thing, it was in the corner shops, it was in W.H. Smith's, it was available to everybody anywhere. It was a very different time than it is now, it was always available for anyone. The most famous person is obviously Judge Dredd. He's become a bit of a cultural icon over the years, despite the fact he's essentially a fascist who goes around shooting people and at least once committed genocide of an entire race, and just bizarre for British people to get behind him to the extent they had. Obviously there's the horror that was the Judge Dredd movie, which for those of us who are fans choose not to talk about, Sloan's got a lot to answer for. They're making a new movie at the moment, actually including the current creators and stuff like that, so hopefully we'll be able to put this in the bin where it belongs. Judge Anderson was a character who was a sidekick to Judge Dredd, but span it into her own strip. The creators basically put her through the mill over the years. She was a lesbian whose lover killed herself, she was raped as a child, all sorts of craziness. The creator of Judge Anderson and Judge Dredd also created History of Violence, which is a pretty successful movie, not necessarily surprising. It's the only thing he's ever made any money out of, because he won't write comic books about superheroes or anything, so he's basically unknown in the States. Halo Jones is another one of my massive favourites. It was a comic in the early 80s. It was girl power before the Spice Girls ever minded a line or Buffy was in Joss Whedon's head. It's just basically a girl who travels the universe thinking she's got a normal life and just ends up in all sorts of crazy adventures. It was written by this man, Alan Moore, who's insane, essentially. Alan Moore wrote Watchmen, V for Vendetta, League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, and basically is the biggest influence on comic books in the last 30 years. One of his proteges wrote this, which is called Zenith. It was the only ever superhero comic that's ever been in 2000 AD. It was basically about Lovecraftian monsters, drunk Welshmen, psychedelic hippies, and an acid house favouring robot. It was written by this guy, and that is it. Grant Morrison, this is his autobiography picture. He is a crazy guy who actually thinks he practices chaos magic. He is currently the most successful comic book writer in the world, makes an awful lot more money than me. This is just a random character that I really liked, so I thought I'd shove it into this presentation, just in case I needed the time. It's a guy called Chopper. He was a B-list at best, but I liked the picture and I liked it. I needed a break. This is a character called Slain, who is basically a Celtic version of Conan the Barbarian. Very, very much bizarrely detailed Irish history in the stories. I actually did my degree in Celtic studies and I spoke more about that than anything else. These were the ABC Warriors. These were basically robots who killed lots of people, were in future wars. I mean, who doesn't love robots going around shooting things? I mean, it's the entire basis of why those comics. It was written by somebody called Pat Mills, however. Pat Mills has been in the comic book game forever and was one of the founders of 2000 AD. His most famous work is something called Charlie's War, which is an incredibly sensitive story of a young man in the First World War in the trenches. It's just been reprinted. This is the King of Goths, Neil Gaiman, who wrote The Sandman and wrote American Gods and various books. He got his start in 2000 AD and basically owes most of his career to stealing ideas from previous writers. If the 80s were the heyday of 2000 AD, the 90s were the dark ages. Various editorial changes, the company swapped hands. Basically, most of the comic book creators in the UK found they can make more money writing superhero stuff in the States. and it's only very recently that it's got any better. This is my safety slide. So basically, thanks for listening. I'll be drinking that for the rest of the evening. If you want to talk comic books, I'll be at the bar. Thank you very much.